So what's the kind of 7+ kind of yearly schedule then? What kind of period are we in now?
So we're in a quiet period right now because the exams happen in December and early January. So this isn't really the crunch time that it is for people who do GCSE tutoring and things like that. But you would not go away during the October half term if you were a 7+ teacher, because that's the time that you really need to be there for your students. I just thought to myself, there has to be a better way. And I would never write off a child and say that child can't get into that school, because if the support is there, they can do whatever they want. So that same view I had for my children, my own children, it spills over into everything I do. Schools will tell parents is, you don't need to do any extra preparation. We're going to test your child on what they already know from the Key Stage 1 curriculum. It's not actually true. If you haven't worked with children of that age, it's very different. You can't sit down and just work for an hour. It needs to be fun and engaging and inspiring in a very different way than 11+ tuition is.
Welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. I'm your host, Ludo Miller, and I'll be interviewing tutors and thought leaders from across the tutoring landscape to inspire, inform, and motivate you to become the best tutor you can be. The Qualified Tutor community is a safe and supportive space for tutors who love to learn and grow. We offer training, resources, ideas, and a chance to connect with like-minded tutors. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes. Welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. My name is Ludo Miller, and today we are welcoming on Ilana King. Welcome, Ilana.
Thank you very much for having me.
Ilana is the founder of Education Pathfinder, author of the Parents' Handbook for the 7+ entrance exams, the link to which will be in the show notes below. And Ilana is the regular deliverer of webinars and workshops for parents on how to prepare for the complex world of 7+ examinations. Now, as a mother of 3 and with qualified teacher status, Ilana has witnessed education in children in great detail over the past 20 years or so, allowing her to hone her craft in delivering tailored learning for students. But today, as well as calling on that, we'll be diving into the world of 7+ learning and how tutors can support students and parents most effectively at this age, at that age when children are just beginning to comprehend the importance of their progress and their learning. So what a pleasure to invite you on, Ilana.
Thank you so much.
So we'd love to kick off with a question that we ask regularly with our guests, and which produces some wonderful answers. And that question is, Ilana, what is your why as an educator?
My why started a long time ago at the very beginning of my career. I did a PGCE and I took my first job teaching reception in a local state primary school. And I just thought to myself, there has to be a better way. At that point, I was not a parent myself, but I just thought there's got to be a way for me to make this experience for children better, to make outcomes for children better. And I didn't think the classroom environment that I was in did that. So I left and I set up a bunch of different educational enterprises over the years. And I found ways to really think about what creates that best experience for the child. And this kind of overlapped into my own life. I had 3 children of my own, 3 boys, and I made the decision to home educate them way back from the beginning. They never went to school until they entered at sixth form doing A-levels. And my focus and my reason for doing this was always about giving them the most opportunity. And I felt that I could achieve that by not putting them into the school system in the first place. And I could help them achieve excellence in whichever way they wanted to go. And, I've got one computer scientist, one musician, one animal biologist. They're all very, very different, but I could tailor what they needed directly to them. And that, of course, continued through my own work as a tutor and in supporting families on their journey. That never really changed from the very beginning of my career to the point we're at now. I always look at a child and think, what do I need to do? How do I support them to get where they want to go? And of course, when we're talking about entrance exams, that's into the school of their choice. And I would never write off a child and say that child can't get into that school, because if the support is there, they can do whatever they want. So that same view I had for my children, my own children, it spills over into everything I do.
To everything you do. Okay, well, maybe we could dive a little bit more into kind of those different areas, and obviously, yes, you've told us a little bit there about kind of how you've come to do what you do today, and that's a kind of a really important way to think, I think, about doing what you do, is to think about why you do it. That's, for those listeners who haven't picked up on this already, that's this question comes from Simon Sinek and his work on starting with why. Now, Ilana, obviously the work that you've been doing as a tutor has focused around entrance examinations, which is a large part of the tutoring landscape. And as we talked about before, it's not all that tutoring is about, but it is a large part, not just 7+, but 11+, getting into those schools and colleges that students are aiming for. So tell us a little bit more about the 7+ exam then.
So the 7+ exam is a funny beast. Most people know about the 11+. The 11+ is applicable kind of across the UK in lots of different ways, both into private schools and grammar schools. 7+ is a little bit different. 7+ is almost exclusively in London, not exclusively. There are a few very small pockets elsewhere in the UK, but pretty much it's a London thing. And it's a competitive selection process for the private school system in London for entry into year 3. So it's taken partway through year 2, usually in the December, sometimes very early January. So children will have only had kind of one term of year 2 before they actually take the exam. And it's very competitive for most of the schools. So you can have as many as 16 children per available place at the school who sit the initial written exam. It primarily tests maths and English. There's an increasing number of schools that also do reasoning, usually nonverbal reasoning, but it can be verbal reasoning. It can be both. It can be one. It does vary school by school. The tests are a written form in the first stage, but there is a second stage assessment day where approximately 2 children per available place are called back to the school. And then it is less paper-based at that point and much more about interaction and interviews and activities.
Okay, so it's got some similar features to other entrance examinations at different ages, but I guess what might be a helpful place to go next is to tell our listeners a little bit more about what the common features of the 7+ exam are that differentiate it from other areas.
So what differentiates it quite a lot from the 11+ is there is no similarities school to school. So what you might have at 11+ is one type of exam. So for instance, you might have the CEM or the GL type of exam, or you might have the pre-test that covers a whole bunch of different schools. With the 7+, every school sets their own paper. There is no system that goes across the schools. And the level of that paper is very different school to school. So there's a lot of inside knowledge that's actually needed to understand how to prepare a child, because it's not as simple as saying what the schools will tell you and what the schools will tell parents is, you don't need to do any extra preparation. We're going to test your child on what they already know from the Key Stage 1 curriculum. It's not actually true. First of all, they haven't completed the Key Stage 1 curriculum at the time that they take the exam. Remember, they're taking it in the end of the first term of year 2. So they still have the rest of that year to do. And really, the reality is that for the top schools, they're actually testing into the Key Stage 2 curriculum, into the year 3 curriculum. So the child's not going to have covered that at school, whether they're in a state school or even if they're in a prep school that is doing more towards the exam, they're not going to have covered everything that is on the test. So you really do need to know, as an educator, what each school tests, what level they test it to, and then feed that into how you're actually going to prepare that child. So yes, it's maths, yes, it's English. So a quick rundown would be, in English, it's testing reading comprehension and writing composition, same as the 11 plus exam. And there's, of course, an element of spelling and grammar within that. Primarily, it's open answer, not multiple choice. There are a couple of schools that do multiple choice, but almost exclusively it's open answer. In maths, they're testing obviously all the usual things, but the emphasis is very much on mental arithmetic and word problems. Those make up the vast majority of the exams. And then if there's reasoning, nonverbal or verbal reasoning, again, it varies school to school, and you'll need to know that as well. So it's not as simple as just saying, go in and support that child in what they're learning in school and make sure they know how to do it, because you're having to actually teach from scratch lots of things that they're not learning in school that they're going to need to be able to display on that exam. And in addition to that, some areas of what they're learning in school will never make it onto the exam. So for instance, they need to write a story for the writing composition part. It's almost always a story. They're looking for very specific features within that story. It's not necessarily the way that they're teaching story writing in school. It's very, very specific what they're looking for in that child on that writing exercise. They're not going to ask them to write any of the 12 other things that they might be learning in school. So it's really not as simple as take what they're learning in school, make sure that they're up to scratch on that, and then they can sit and do this exam. There's so much more to it than that.
This summer, join us for the first ever Love Tutoring Festival, a celebration of tutoring in all its aspects. We invite you to bring all your experience and expertise to make this event the most exciting event to ever happen in the world of tutoring.
The festival, running from Monday the 28th of June to Friday the 2nd of July, is a rich and varied programme of free events, keynote presentations, workshops, live podcasts, and practical demonstrations spread out over a whole week. And don't worry, everything will be recorded, so as long as you're enrolled, we'll give you access to any of the events that you miss later on. We're also offering a limited number of tickets for our famous CPD accredited workshops. If you purchase a ticket to any or all of these practical and engaging workshops, you'll also receive a certificate of completion after the event.
To register for the free pass and to grab your CPD tickets, go to qualifiedtutor.org/Love Tutoring Festival.
Yeah, okay. So you've talked a little bit there about some of the aspects of the 7 plus exam itself for maths and English, but also some of the wider questions around it. And one of those caught my attention in particular. And perhaps you could give us a little bit more insight into the fact that if there are areas in the 7 plus exam that aren't taught at school as part of the common curriculum, how can students get around this then? How do you find that students cope with that if the primary teaching of what they're learning is not in school?
So they need to learn it outside of school, without a doubt. And the question becomes how they do that. And I think there are a number of different options there. Obviously, we're talking about tutoring today, and a tutor can come in, and a tutor needs to be really well-versed, really knowledgeable about the 7 plus exams, and they can fill in the gaps. So the things that are not being taught in school can be taught by that tutor. It's not the only way. And part of what I do is support parents who want to take this journey on their own. Not everybody can afford tuition. And we're talking about a very specialist type of tuition. So generally the fees, particularly in London for tutors who do this, are quite high. And, while many of the families can afford this, there are families that I've worked with that cannot afford this. So there needs to be another option to them. Hence, the book I wrote was to guide parents who wanted to try to undertake this on their own and have an idea of a roadmap to do that. How do they prepare their child? What do they need to cover and what steps? So, there's no one particular way to prepare for this exam. You cannot just rely on the school. I can say that for sure. You cannot just rely on the school, but what you do beyond that, a parent can hire in a specialist to tutor the child. A parent can take on the work themselves with the support of a consultant like me, or books, or there are courses out there. So, courses for the child, so there are lots of different ways of doing it. The reality is it's a lot of work. So whoever does it, someone has to do it, whether it's outsourced to a tutor who's going to come in and work with that child, or whether the parent's going to do it themselves. There is a lot of additional work that has to be done outside of the school day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, I assume then, that's what the schools are rewarding, is that extra work that students have been able to put in, whether it's being able to afford a tutor, or whether it's being able, whether it's having a parent who's able to put in that time to support the child around that, or whether there's anyone kind of within the school who has a special interest or knowledge in the 7+ exam for the particular school that they're going on towards. Maybe that happens less in schools, but those are some of the options. I'm glad we talked through some of those options for children kind of to receive support for that. But I wanted to just move to another kind of topic here that obviously centers around the 7+ exam. But you've talked in the past about a lack of specialist tutors in 7+ tuition. Why is this, and how can we kind of work around this? How can we resolve this?
So I think one of the biggest issues is that people don't tend to choose this as a specialist area. I don't know that tutors generally choose a specialist area or even think of it that way beyond whatever it is that they are comfortable with teaching. I would love to sit here and say, I chose 7+ tutoring. I sat down when I became a tutor and I thought, what do I want to tutor? And this was it. That's not the truth at all. I had never even heard of the 7+ exam when I first started tutoring. It wasn't something my own children had done, so it just wasn't even on my radar. And like many tutors, I just fell into it. I was asked just by my location. I live in London. I live in an area of London that has a lot of families preparing for the 7+ exam. I was tutoring. I was asked to tutor a family, some children in a family who were doing the 7+ exam. So it was a chance encounter, as it is for many people. And over the years, working with many, many, many families, I became an expert in what's required to achieve success in the exams. But this route is exactly the problem. So it's really difficult, because ideally what we want is tutors who have chosen to work in entrance exams, whether it's 7+ or 11+, who have gained that specialist knowledge and information about how to help children succeed, and are then able to support those families in that way. Now, there's a real lack of 7+ tutors in particular. So there are maybe tutors out there who are 11+ tutors, and they think, okay, well, I'll teach 7+ as well because it's not that different, but they've never actually worked with children as young. We're talking about working with children of 5 and 6 years old. So let's be quite clear. Often these children start their tuition in reception, and certainly if they haven't started in reception, they will start in year 1. So these are very, very young children that we're talking about. And if you haven't worked with children of that age, it's very different. You can't sit down and just work for an hour. It needs to be fun and engaging and inspiring in a very different way than 11+ tuition is. I'm not suggesting 11+ tuition shouldn't be fun, engaging, and inspiring, but it is different. Working with a 10-year-old and working with a 5-year-old are very, very different. Or you might have primary teachers who are, in fact, very experienced in working with 5 and 6-year-olds. That was my special area when I started. That was absolutely my special area. That doesn't mean they're 7+ specialists. They might be very good at working with 5 and 6-year-olds, but if they haven't got the knowledge about what is needed on these exams, which is very different from what they've been teaching in school, then they're also not specialists. And a lot of what I've seen in the tutoring landscape in London, in 7+ worries me. I see agencies put tutors out there as 7+ specialists, when behind the scenes, I know very clearly that they have zero experience in that area. So it's a concern because these families are relying on these tutors. It is a very pressured for the families time. They are putting all of their hopes and dreams and aspirations for their child getting into a specific school, and they are putting in a huge amount of work over a year or 2 years to make sure that happens. And if they're being incorrectly supported or wrongly guided, that's a real concern to me. So I really want to see a place where tutors are choosing to go into 7+ tuition and being prepared properly to do that, rather than just saying, I'm going to go in and do this.
Yeah, exactly. Or rather than saying, oh, I'm not finding any work in what I'm doing, so I'll just take my skills and try it 7+.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So for a tutor listening to this who is thinking, this might be something for me. This is something I believe I could transfer my skills into, or which I've had a bit of experience with already. What kind of tutor makes a good 7+ tutor?
It's a great question, because I've worked with a number of tutors who were trying to get into this area. And I've seen those that succeed and those that don't. And the ones that succeed need to understand that it is different working with 5 and 6-year-olds. It doesn't mean they have to have experience of working with 5 and 6-year-olds, but they need to be willing to accept that their current practices are going to have to change to work with that age group. And tutors who are open to change and tutors who are open to trying new things, rather than saying, but I work this way, and I've always worked this way, and this works for me. The ones who are open to change, those are the ones who are more likely to succeed, because there needs to be an element of trying something outside of your comfort zone, because it is very different with 5 and 6-year-olds. There also has to be a mindset that you want these children to succeed. There's a little bit of controversy. Let's talk about the elephant in the room for a minute. Do you agree with 7+? I'm not asking you this specifically, Ludo, but just in general, do you agree with 7+ tuition? It's a controversial area. I've certainly had tutors come into workshops that I've led on 7+ and ask me directly, because I home educate my own children, and I think this is a fair question for them to ask me, how can you support these families on 7+ when you've actually opted out of, any kind of state or private system for your children? And it comes back to my why. You asked me my why at the beginning. I want the best outcomes for these children. These children are going to do the 7+ regardless of whether I am there or not. So your desire to create the best experience for them and the best outcomes for them while they are doing the 7+ will mean, as a tutor, you will have more success. If you go in thinking, I don't agree with 7+. Now, you might not put your own child through 7+. That's a different situation. My children did not go through 7+. That doesn't mean that you can't go in as a tutor to support these families, but you have to believe that you want the right experience, the least stressful experience for that child and that family to be able to support them well.
It's time tutors had their own day. July the 2nd is World Tutors Day, a new global day celebrating tutors and the difference we make. Never before have tutors been as relied upon as this past year, in which tutors from all around the world have stepped in to support struggling students and parents. This is their chance to say thanks. There are lots of ways to get involved. Send your parents and students to worldtutorsday.org to leave a thank you note. Invite them to post a photo thanking you, the tutor, with the Thank Your Tutor hashtag. Or join the gratitude circles on the final day of the Love Tutoring Festival, when we'll be celebrating tutors and all we have to offer. July the 2nd is World Tutors Day. You've gone on to something there that's crucial, that's critical to the essence of tutoring itself, whatever kind of tutoring it is. It's helping a child to progress, and to further their learning, to inspire confidence in what they do, and to make them feel more able to do what is either required of them at school or what is going to be required of them in their future, which is learning and taking on new things, trying new things, expanding their mind. For any kind of tutoring, that should be the objective. But, sorry, go on, Ilana.
Well, absolutely. I just want to say as well that although this is obviously the goal of 7+ tuition is to get them into the school, you can't, we're talking about working with a family for a year or a year and a half. You can't sit down on day one and say, okay, my goal is I'm going to get the child into the school. Therefore, I'm going to drill. That's not how it goes. Your aim when you go in is to help this child get better in everything that they're doing. So it's to help them succeed in maths, in English, not specifically the exam. Yes, of course, the exam is there in the background, but this is not what you're talking to the child about. You are inspiring them to challenge themselves, to get better all the time with the exam in the background. Yeah. So that is our goal, but that is not our focus of tuition. Absolutely not.
No. And as part of that, do you find that even in those situations, even with those students who don't gain a place at the school, i.e. for whom the entrance exam it does not succeed, do you find that their wider learning is improved?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say there's two sides to that. So first of all, nothing you do with that child is wasted. There's no guarantee. They may not get into that school. Even if you are the top 7+ specialist in the country, you've been doing this forever. And I have been doing this for a long time. And, I've worked with a lot of families. I would never guarantee to that family that child's going to get into that school because you just can't do that. But is any of it wasted in that journey? Of course not. You're inspiring that child towards excellence all the time. And that will carry them through in school, throughout their school career. So it's not just about the exam. But there's another side to it as well that we have to remember. We talked about the child, but we have parents. Because we're talking about, I know a lot of tutors work with older children and therefore their contact is mostly with the child. That's not the case with 7+. You're working with very young children and therefore you're working with the parents. So you're managing the expectations of the parents. You're managing the stress levels of the parents. And that is an equal part of what you're doing with the child, because anytime the parents are stressed, that's going to spill over to the child. So you may have this lovely little bubble in your tutoring hour when the child is not stressed and you're making it all wonderful. And then they step outside that bubble to very stressed parents who are very focused on this exam, and everything you've done is kind of wasted in that sense because they feel the stress of the parents. So 7+ tuition is much more than just working with the child. It's really working with the family. And I don't know that all tutors really understand that. Again, if they're working with older children, in my training program that I do for 7+ tutors, a big part of what I do, a lot of our focus is on how do you actually support the parents? How do you think about their levels of stress, your communication with them to keep those stress levels down? Because that's what's then going to benefit the child. And of course, it's all about benefiting the child. We want the best outcome for the child, but we have to work with the family to make that happen.
And that's a key part, isn't it? And that can often be one of the most rewarding parts, isn't it? Is seeing the success of that child, whether it's success into the school or whether it's success viewed as part of a wider metric of their learning being progressed. Seeing that throughout the family can be super, super rewarding, and that's something that, even though I haven't done 7+ tuition myself, I've seen even in the tutoring that I do. Thank you for kind of explaining those areas, Ilana, about the 7+ exam. I think if anyone anywhere wanted to get into this, all they'd have to do is just listen to the last 20-25 minutes of that, because that's really all of the key areas, and it's not the kind of thing that you'd be able to just find out by reading online. You going into that has really explored that and investigated that in much more detail. Now, you also would love to finish on this. You have a book coming out, and you also run Education Pathfinder. What's next for Education Pathfinder?
So Education Pathfinder is there to support both families and tutors. So there's two sides to it. So for the families, I provide them with the support they need on the journey. That might be an assessment for their child so they know where to start in their progression towards the exam. It might be consultations with me so that they can talk through their plans and how they're going to implement specific areas that they need to work on with the child. My book, so for those who just want to do it themselves, there is a handbook for parents on Amazon where they can just buy the book and follow along on there and do it themselves. And then I have the side in supporting tutors, because I really do believe that the more high quality educators we can get out there in 7+, the better outcomes for families. So I have a training program, 6 months to becoming a 7+ specialist, where it's a blended program. So it has videos to watch on some of the topics that we were just talking about. And you can watch those in your own time, because of course, anyone who comes into 7+, they might be teaching full time during the day. They might have their own tuition that they're doing. So you need a little bit of flexibility. And then there are group sessions. So you can talk to other people in the same boat as you and do some more learning through that. And then there's individual mentoring sessions with me every month as well, where we can really get to the nitty gritty of the tuition that you're doing and the areas that you need support on. So my plan is to continue to train specialists. I think we need specialists at 7+ and 11+. Maybe one day I will expand the training program to 11+. At the moment, it's just 7+, because I do feel like there's a real gap. People put themselves out there as specialists when they just don't have that knowledge and skill that's needed.
Yeah, and we love that. We love the idea of training tutors. So we're very, very glad to have you on the podcast, Ilana, to hear about what you're doing and to learn more about Education Pathfinder, in that it's not just supporting students in their 7+, but it's also supporting tutors to get into this area. And like that, kind of all boats rise with the tide. The general support for children at 7+ will improve, certainly. Now, we can't, finish this conversation without mentioning a little bit about the Love Tutoring Festival, which is coming up at the end of this month, starting on Monday, the 28th of June, in which there will be the Tutors Marketplace, for which tutors and tutoring businesses can market their products. We may well be seeing Ilana there. There will be plenty of other tutors and tutoring businesses showcasing their products in this open marketplace. So that'll be taking place from 1 till 2 p.m. and from 4 till 6 p.m. on every single one of the days of the festival. It'll be an open sort of meeting hall, virtual meeting hall for stall holders. So we'd love to see attendees there as well. But Ilana, thank you very much for joining us for that. You clearly talk about this area with great passion and enthusiasm, and I'm sure that comes through in the tutoring that you do too. So one would be very lucky to be your student. We've been very lucky to have you as a guest on this podcast, and thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very good. And we'd love to have you back on later this summer, perhaps into the autumn, when the 7+ tutoring schedule kind of restarts again. So that those tutors who listen today can have a refresher, or who might even have joined you by that point, we hope. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for listening. I've been Ludo Miller. This has been the Qualified Tutor Podcast. And our guest today has been Ilana King. You can find out all about her book, her course, her company in the show notes below. But thank you once again, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for listening to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, where tutors share their expertise to support the tutoring community. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org, or find it in the show notes below. We exist to connect, share, and learn with you, because tutoring is a small job that makes a big difference. And of course, we can't forget, in the week starting Monday, the 28th of June, the week of the Love Tutoring Festival, we will be recording 4 consecutive live late-night podcasts starting with Send and Mental Health on the Monday, moving to running an agency on the Tuesday, being a professional tutor on the Wednesday, and being an NTP tutor on the Thursday. So those will go out live. We can't wait to record those podcasts with our wonderful guests and for you to join in either live or to listen along afterwards. Those will be released on the Qualified Tutor podcast. So grab your tickets at qualifiedtutor.org/love tutoring festival and we'll see you all there.